Yo, so today I'm answering a bit of a personal question. Somebody asked me, Yo, Elliott, how do you apply the principles of abandonment to divine providence to the everyday situations in your personal life? Great, man. Before I jump into that question, just want to let you know that I'm sitting outside here today in my backyard, and it is windy, harsh. You hear that thunder and lightning? It's like a storm is coming through. And sometimes, like, that's life. Life is a storm. Storms coming through. Things that are unexpected. Turbulent winds. Rains when it was unexpected. Dark clouds. Like, isn't that a metaphor for the things that we try to avoid in our life? I mean, I know I have. The whole idea of working hard and hustling and providing and protecting has a lot to do with hustling. Has a lot to do with creating circumstances that are pleasing and pleasurable to our ego and to our perceived good and to our perceived future. But here come the rain. Here comes the dark clouds. Here comes circumstances that are completely out of our hands that we're meant to deal with. And sometimes these things come unexpectedly, right? You might not expect that there's going to be a rain. There's going to be rain, right? You have a picnic plan with your girl or with your family. You have something planned and you didn't know it was going to rain. So there are a lot of times when things just should like show up in your life that were totally unexpected from your perspective. And then there are things in our lives that we choose. And a lot of times these choices, because of their disordered foundation, meaning they come from our ego, which is fear-based, hopes, fears, dreams, desires. We choose these things that in the moment we think we want, and we pursue it with vengeance and vitality, really going hard, and then we discover we don't actually want it. It is not designed for us. It is not what we thought it would be. And so I know your question is about me and how I apply abandonment in my own life. And right now, I'm currently dealing with perhaps the biggest call for abandonment in my life, and that is losing my home. Now, I may talk a little bit more about that in another video. I let you guys know about my situation. But today I'm not going to go into the mechanics of that. I'm going to make another video about our actual move because the house is under contract. It will be sold. It is my dream house. I love this place. Look, that's my lake in the backyard where I go and walk my dogs. I love it, man. It's all sunshine and rainbows. Look at my pastures back there. Beautiful house, beautiful pool. Man, I love this place. But as things unfolded, some of which were poor decisions on my part, and some of which was abandonment to divine providence, God's plan for my life, what He saw fit for who I am and where I'm going in this next season of my life. So I've abandoned myself to it. I don't have the angst, I don't have the anxiety, I don't have the depression, I don't have the problems that most people have when they look at circumstances and give it power. Like an abandonment, material circumstances have no power. In other words, they're all emanations from God. And so that there's nothing discordant in the created world. The only thing that's discordant is our attachment to the created world. But everything in the created world operates under divine law. There's an order. They say that we live in a fractal universe, and you can actually code mathematically the entire universe. The entire universe is understandable. It's legible, right? We can understand it. We can perceive it by natural laws, most of which are mathematical equation, right? An equation like gravity. It's mathematical, right? Velocity, trajectory, all these things are mathematical. This rain that I'm experiencing right now, here comes the rain. You'll be able to see it better in the pool. Here goes the rain, baby. Raining behind me. This rain, ooh, it's wetting me up, is is here based on mathematical reasons. There's a certain amount of precipitation that the clouds can hold. And once that precipitation, that number, we can map it. Once that number has been met, then the rain falls. So why would I put my power in anything except the brilliance, the mathematical brilliance that created our universe? Why would I put my trust in any of the creatures within the universe, myself included, my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own family? Why would I make those things sovereign over my life instead of the God that creates all things, the God that sets everything into motion, the God that created the math by which we can understand and experience the world? My iPad's getting all wet right now. I'm getting wet and I'm getting cold out here. I'm gonna tough it out for you guys because I have something real special I want to share with you. So today I have a reading. It's from Abandonment to Divine Providence, the book that I've been really learning from. I've been a mentor. I've been a mentee. I'd say that Jean-Pierre de Caussade has been like a mentee to me in the letters that he's written to the religious that he served, and the book Abandonment to Divine Providence, which is a, a compilation of his ideas and his words. Today, woo, divine providence is barking on us right now. My dog's freaking out. It's all right, Ram, quiet. So let's break down this passage from abandonment to divine providence and see what wisdom it could provide, uh, what what it provides for me in my circumstance, but also how it might be useful to you in your day-to-day circumstances. Fooey, quiet, Klutz, Klutz, good Klutz, quiet. So from abandonment to divine providence, Jean-Pierre de Caussade. The order of God and his divine will, in whatever form it takes, is the life of your soul, whether you cooperate with it actively or passively. It's amazing. So the divine order, the divine will, God's plan for your life, this thing that we're all seeking after, right? We're all wanting to know, what is my purpose? What is my mission? What does God want from me? What should I do? He says it is that question. The answer to that question is the very life of your soul. So that means that God's will is in the life of your soul. Your soul is not separate from the life of God. In other words, whatever God's doing, it's happening through your soul. And he goes on and says, you can either choose to cooperate with it actively or passively. Active cooperation is recognizing that God is asking me to do something because it's been presented right in front of me, right? You see a homeless person and you get the divine action in your heart to give that person money or to give that person food, right? It was an action that was called upon you that maybe you didn't plan for. You didn't plan to be feeding people today, but you abandoned yourself and actively took action in the direction of God's prompting, his will, his movement in your soul. And the movement of your soul, movement of our souls are not separate from other people. The movement in my soul, even to make this video, corresponds with the hunger in a soul that may be watching this right now that is needing abandonment in their life. So God sees through all of our eyes. God sees through every person in every circumstance and seeks the good for all parties involved. He goes on, he says, whatever connection this divine will has to your mind, it always nourishes the soul and makes it grow by giving it that which is best for it at each moment. So I love that. He says that whatever connection this divine has to your mind. So he used the word soul before. And the word that we use now, modern language, secular language, uses the word psyche. Psyche. And I tend to believe, based on definitions of the soul and descriptions of the psyche, that it's not just the mind. It's what's happening in the mind and in the heart. And the heart is the seat of emotion. So it's happening in your heart. He says the connection that it has to your mind, it always nourishes the soul. So whatever it's doing in your mind, whatever the divine action is doing in your mind, whatever is happening in your mind, it always nourishes the soul. Meaning that if there's a thought that's discordant and you feel discordant emotions in your body, if there's a goal that you perceive you're being called to, but there's angst, there's anxiety, there's fear in your body, it is a moment to pause. It is a moment to discern. It's a moment to take your time and discern whether or not this thought, this emotion is in alignment with the divine action. Is this from God or is it from my ego? Now, God will take all things, be it from his will or our fallen will, and he will turn it to good. Only that it might take longer. You might have more bumps and bruises as a result. Instead, we can just choose to actively pursue God's will by doing what's in front of us. And then passively, it's simply saying yes. Mary's fiat in the gospel, her yes, let your will be done. So there may be a pain that you are experiencing, right? Like a sickness or a disease or the loss of your home, like in my situation. And you're actually being asked to not do anything. There are often times when like the healing process just needs to unfold. The healing in your mind and in your body just needs to happen. In other words, God is doing it. All we have to do is cooperate with it. All we got to do is say yes to it. And he says that God will give that which is best for each moment. And each moment, and he'll go on, because each moment is not the same. What was right for yesterday may not be right for today. He says, it is not one specific thing that produces these happy results. It is that which comes by the order of God for the present moment. Right? He's reiterating it. It's not specific things that produce happy results. It's not the house that produces the happy result. It's not the relationship that produces that happy result. It's not the new job. It's not the career. It's not the business. It's not the money. He says that which produces that happy result is that what God presents in the moment. How many times do we get so busy on future results, trying to do something, trying to create something for the future that we miss the present? This is akin to people who, spend decades building their business while slowly growing in obesity, right? It's like you're doing all this stuff for money that may come in the future, but yet you're sick, sad, and depressed today because you're not tending to the most important thing, which is God's order for the present moment. He goes on, he says, what was best for the previous moment no longer is. It has been discarded by the will of God. God will very much use something that's amazing, that you'll love, that you'll appreciate, like this home. Something that you love, something that you adore, something that brings pleasure into your life. But remember too also that these things are for a season. God brought me to this house for a reason and for a season. And now that I've abandoned myself to divine providence and no longer have attachment to this material thing, I'm available to see what God wants to unfold for me in the next season. I know what it is. I know exactly what it is. But the abandonment in me, the wisdom in me is guiding me or guarding me from taking relentless, anxious action rather than just allowing the image to form in my mind, allowing the emotion to take root in my heart, to allow my soul to come in alignment with the new reality, the spiritual reality, which is the blueprint for physical reality. Once I got into alignment with that, once I abandoned my thoughts and my emotions to that, I'm now open to perception that I didn't have before. I can see things that God wants to do that I wasn't willing to see before. I couldn't see before. I just couldn't. He says it has been discarded by the will of God. Your relationship may be discarded. Your home may be discarded. The money may be discarded. Your job may be discarded. He says that will has moved on. God has moved on. Now coming in a different form to give birth to the duty of the present moment. One thing has to die. I think this is what Jesus means when he says you got to die to be born again. You got to lose yourself to find yourself. You got to lose your old life, your old attachments, your old fears, hopes, and dreams. We're not physically dying. We're dying to physicality. And in the death to that physicality becomes arising, he says, giving birth to the duty of the present moment. The present moment is the only moment that actually instructs. Everything else is a figment of our imagination. Finally, he says, and it is the duty He says, it is this duty, in whatever form it takes, that is currently the holiest thing for your soul. And I love the way he puts it. It's currently the holiest thing for your soul. Currently, the most holy thing for your soul may be to make your bed, may be to brush your teeth, may be to sit in silent presence with him while he instructs and guides your heart. It's not always what we think it should be. We think from a analytical, reasonable mind, but in many ways, God is not reasonable. He doesn't, they say that the thoughts of God aren't the thoughts of man. We think with reason. God thinks in quantum leaps. God thinks in miracles. God thinks not in timelines like we do. He thinks in terms of timelines as ways of life or expressions of life or seasons of life that can be traversed instantly. He can instantly move you from one timeline to another, and it doesn't have to work in a linear way. We believe and we act from our reason, and reason is linear, but God's action is not linear. That's why you have quantum insights, things that just pop into you, grace, right? The right thing at the right time, the right word at the right time, the right source at the right time, even though you did nothing for it. And I've watched this in my life for the past year. Every month at the right time, God provides. And at first, I just, I didn't know how to receive it. I didn't know that it was God's grace that was beginning to carry my life because I abandoned myself to it. In many ways, I thought I needed to push the river. I needed to make it happen. God gives me an inspiration, a movement in my heart, and I take responsibility for it like I need to do it. But that's not the case. All I need to do is cooperate with what God is showing me in this moment. There are lots of things that I want to do, lots of big goals and dreams that I have about YouTube and what I want to do here, sharing, expressing, and guiding you guys through these videos. And there are a lot of things, like grandiose things, that I want to go and do. But the most important thing for the present moment was to turn on this camera in the middle of this storm and to speak to you. This was the most important thing. God will never ask you to do something that causes you to forsake your responsibility. According to Father Kusad, he says that there's basically two things that's required. The first is to say yes. The first is to recognize God's movement in your life. Recognize that there's only one power. Recognize that he is leading you to the promised land. And that your job is only to set aside judgment and say yes, voluntarily, abandoning yourself actively and passively to all of the crosses, all of the challenges, all of the goods, the goals, the dreams, the fears, the desires that are divinely inspired in the moment. We just got to say yes. All we got to do is say yes. You don't need to figure it out. You don't need to plan it out. You just need to cooperate. You just need to say yes. And number two, stay in a state of grace, meaning that you know that if you drink too much, you smoke too much, lay around too much, watch too much TV, scroll on the phone too much, that these things set you off your path. You don't have the energy to say yes. You don't have the insight to understand or to perceive his grace and his mercy in your life. So my friends, the truth is that we don't control our lives. We're not in control of our lives. Abandonment is the fastest way to holiness, but it's the only way to truth. There's only one truth. There's only one truth, and there's only one presence, and the truth is embedded in the present in every single moment. There's no seeking, there's no searching, there's no grinding, there's no going, there's nothing for you to do but say yes and remain free from attachment, all attachment to sin, but even attachment to good things that cause you to miss, that cause you to plan against God's will for your life.